So I currently have a 3-hour cinematic lore video for the entirety of Armored Core 6 in the works, and it's almost ready for release, but until then, I think secrets are always a good way to fill the time. So, number 1, I don't know if anyone asked, but yes, you can get stepped on by the Strider. In New Game++, you're given the option to escort the thing, but Institute mechs show up and destroy it before you get the chance. So if you really want to escort the Strider, just avoid climbing it in the original mission, and after a really, really long time, it will walk out of bounds.
The target has left the combat zone. 621, you failed the mission.
If you thought that Walter sounded disappointed there, wait until you hear these next lines from ALLMIND. If you refuse to compete in the arena until your 3rd playthrough, she says this when you complete rank D.
It appears the simulator struggled to hold your interest. But perhaps your self-possession is what is needed to achieve great things. We will learn from your example.
Of course, this means doing the entire game without any OS tuning upgrades, which is no mean feat.
We admire the fortitude needed to maintain self-discipline under the circumstances. This has been a fruitful exercise.
Spoiler warning, but if you completed the 3rd ending, you'll know that ALLMIND is kind of a rogue AI, desperate to achieve choral release, to the point where she attempts to kill you at the end of the game. So she gets extremely confused if you assist with her integration program after knowing full well what she is.
Your assistance with the program is appreciated, but why now? Do you think that the release project may yet succeed one day?
She truly loses her mind when 621, this god killer of a pilot, only decides to complete her training exercises at the very end of their journey.
Is this correct? You never achieved certification until now? But how did you... What were you thinking? This is all very confusing, but thank you for participating.
Before I go on, I want to quickly shout out Displate, the sponsor of this video. They're currently hosting a Black Friday sale, and the discounts shown on screen are the highest they've ever had. So if you've been putting off getting some high quality prints for your walls, now's kind of the best time. I have a ton of FromSoft inspired ones that I think you might like. There's the Painted World, filled with 4 worlds inspired by Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, and Demon Souls. There's Raven's Return, there's Firekeeper's Apprentice, Guardian of Moonlight, Convergence, and now for the first time there's Convergence 3D, which reimagines the previous print in a more 3-dimensional style. There's a ton of little secrets hidden in there, as always, and I hope it leads those that buy it to come back and find more. So if you're interested, links in the description, but for now, back to the video. So in Armored Core 4, the briefings looked like this, and recently, data miner Zully the Witch found this shot from an unused Armored Core 6 cutscene, which probably used this briefing style as a sort of placeholder. Interestingly, it's revealed here that the B.A.L.T.E.U.S MT was called a communist MT, at least for a little while, internally. It is B.A.L.M. giving this briefing, so I guess it kind of fits that they'd label the RLF as communists. One question I came across in my comments was someone asking why Rusty was ranked 9th in the arena simulator, when canonically, he's one of the most adept pilots in the game. Well, to answer that, Rusty is an undercover agent for the RLF, and it's possible he doesn't want to attract too much attention or to be seen as a potential threat until the time is right. Compare his motives to the top-ranking arena pilot who's Freud, who is just obsessed with his AC's performance. Freud lives for the fight, so it makes sense that he would rank up higher in the arena, even if Rusty could canonically wipe the floor with him. Alternatively, Rusty being 9th could also be a callback to Armored Core 4's Red Glint, who was this legendary next AC that was also ranked 9th in the arena, despite being, and I quote, considerably more powerful than its rank suggests. But even Rusty is nothing compared to 621, who, in New Game Plus at least, is capable of killing the Juggernaut boss so fast that Rusty doesn't even get a chance to fly away. This results in unique dialogue from Rusty, since he's still here at the end of the battle.
So that's how a hound fights. I'll take care of mopping up the remaining hostiles. With luck, maybe we'll meet again.
So I've heard that when Rusty calls 621 buddy, he's perhaps more accurately calling them battle buddy or comrade, which are more literal translations of the Japanese word that's used. I've heard people say that the word buddy sounds a lot more natural in Japanese than it does in English, and I can sort of see that because buddy always sounded a bit condescending to me, but I also get why the localization chose that word, as I agree that it sounds better than battle buddy or comrade. Another thing that a few people have noted is that Rusty and Raven's friendship might actually be reflected in nature as well. Ravens are carrion birds, relying on the leftover meat of other animals to feed. So, in many cases, logically, ravens have been observed at wolf kill sites. But what scientists noted was strange was that the wolves didn't chase off the birds, despite the birds consuming a large portion of their kill. Ravens have even been observed playing with young wolf pups, and all of this and more has led some to believe that there might be a mutualistic relationship between the species, where both benefit in some way. The ravens clearly benefit from finding the wolves' kills, and some speculate that the ravens actually help the wolves find potential prey as well. Number 10. You might have noticed that Steel Haze Ortus, the AC that Rusty eventually pilots, it looks a bit different to other ACs, and I think this might be by design. After all, Steel Haze Ortus represents a sort of advanced arquebus prototype, and canonically it's this huge leap forward in tech that the RLF desperately need. And I've seen a lot of people commenting that this Alba AC looks a lot more Gundam than anything else in the game, and they're onto something there because Ortus's design can be credited to Takayuki Yanase, a popular mech designer and former employee of From Software, also known for designing many Gundam units. I've seen comments that they really nailed the heroic look of this mech, and I agree. That heroic look really suits considering what this mech means to Rusty and the RLF. Number 11. Events on Rubicon are brought about by the original Raven and Branch, who leak the fact that Coral is present here to the corporations. Fittingly, Raven's AC is called Nightfall. I feel like that sort of represents the darkness that is falling over Rubicon as the game begins. To contrast with this though, Rusty's AC is Steel Haze Ortus, and the word Ortus is Latin for sunrise, a reference to Rusty's desire to usher in a new dawn for Rubicon. And fittingly, Nightfall appears at the start of the game, and Sunrise appears at the end. The word Sunrise is also referenced in Rusty's theme, which plays when you defeat him atop the Xylem. I always found this moment so sad, as he finally achieves his goal to pilot this new AC, but he's forced to pilot it against you instead of Arquebus. The relevant lyrics are as follows. Of all the characters in the game, Rusty is definitely the most anime. So anime that he's coded to assault boost into you at the start of your fight. The game wants you to have this epic clash, and this is so hard-coded that even if you assault boost back at him, he won't break away to avoid you or anything. The coolest part of Raven's AC is its visor, the Shade Eye, which is actually a modified version of the Finder Eye that 621 has equipped at the start of the game. The way the visor drops on this is so cool, but did you know it actually does this in-game as well? The visor will drop whenever you lock onto enemies, and I think it's the only headpiece with this behavior. What's more, you can actually paint this part of the headpiece if you want even more style when it drops. When it comes to part names in AC6, they can seem pretty random, but there's actually a logic to pretty much all of them. In fact, entire categories of parts in this game actually have themes. For example, as discovered by user Redpool on Reddit, parts by B.A.L.T.E.U.S are named after the 10 renowned disciples of Matsuo Basho, a famous haiku poet of the Edo period. Balam's parts feature the surnames of famous entomologists, whose research relates to the study of insects. Dafang's parts are named after ancient Chinese constellations. Elcano's parts are Spanish words like the viento, which means wind, and trueno, which means thunder. Melnite's parts are rock and metal references. The RRI's parts are often animal body parts and astronomy terms. I'll also add that a lot of RRI machines are named after plants, like the Helianthus sunflower and the Nepenthes pitcher plant. And finally, Schneider's parts are bird names in German, like the Nachtreiher being named after the black-crowned night heron. This also suits their tendency to design aerodynamic parts. Speaking of references though, there's nothing greater than the KSRV multi-energy rifle, which is a reference to the Karasawa from past games. This thing has 3 stages of charging, and when it hits its final stage, it starts to look quite similar to the Karasawas of the past. And you should try this thing out because it recently got a total ammo buff in the recent patch, so I feel like it's finally viable for longer missions now. Try dual wielding this with the VE46A arms and let me know if that's any good. And speaking of a patch, that's the name of Patches in the Armored Core series, or the closest thing to him anyway, and he made his debut as Patch the Good Luck in Armored Core for Answer. And as noted by Zully the Witch, Patch's English voice actor actually returns in Armored Core 6 as none other than Handler Walter. So I wonder if Handler Walter asked 621 to jump off a cliff, would they do it? Walter was a child at Institute City back before the fires of Ibis, where he eventually came under the guardianship of Professor Nagai of the Rubicon Research Institute. Here, they came up with all kinds of tech, including AC parts, some of which appear to be named after members of the Institute. The most obviously named pieces have the abbreviation NGI on them, which surely abbreviates the name of Professor Nagai. But then some parts also have W.L.T.E.U.S on them, which logically would be an abbreviation of Walter, who was also present. But there's other 3-letter abbreviations, Cell, HAL, and Sol, which all refer to the Ibis craft. And of these, HAL is the only one that consists of AC parts, making it somewhat similar to NGI and W.L.T.E.U.S parts. And since NGI and W.L.T.E.U.S were probably named after people, perhaps it's possible that HAL was as well. If I had to guess, I think HAL might have been Walter's father, because according to Nagai's logs, Walter's father was assistant number 1 to Professor Nagai, and they're the only major character in these logs that we never get a name for. Coral weapons like the WLT-101 and the NGI 006 are very unique in Armored Core 6 in that they deal a type of damage that there are no defenses for, not kinetic, energy, or explosive. This is particularly important information in PvP, and these weapons might do more damage there than their stat screens imply. But interestingly, you don't need to wield coral weaponry to take advantage of the coral though. All you need is a coral generator. In addition to turning your boosters red, coral generators also affect your assault armor, your pulse armor, and your pulse protection effects. But this isn't just a color change, because your assault armor will now deal coral damage, meaning it does a significant amount more than regular assault armor will. What's more, pulse armor and pulse protection also get a significant boost to their effectiveness, making any build that can support a coral generator better than you might expect. Shout out to Rubicon Dogs for detailing this information and more in a video. Link in the description. Pulse Armor is my favorite extension, and the reason why actually has nothing to do with the amount of armor you get. Instead, it's my favorite because whenever you activate it, it immediately cancels out all of your built-up impact. And I love how this allows you to interact with your stagger bar, in a sense. It's a really good high-level gameplay habit to get into. You'll notice a lot of ACs in the arena make use of this mechanic as well, and it's no surprise that these are often some of the hardest fights. Combine this technique with any heavy build that is spec'd to absorb a lot of impact, and you'll become borderline unstaggerable in most encounters. Speaking of pulse shields, did you know that pulse effects might have previously been gold instead of light blue? As pointed out by user KeeperUTX on Reddit, early leaked screenshots of Armored Core 6 revealed gold player shields in many of the shots. This user also points out that the logo for Takigawa Harmonix is golden, and Takigawa Harmonix are the designers of the pulse guns in the game, which themselves have golden dishes on them, so I think this golden color would have fit perfectly. I wonder why they changed it. Number 22. One of my favorite visual effects in this game are the core cooling animations that play out whenever you activate an extension. Every single one of these is different depending on the core part that you have equipped. Here's a quick showcase of some of the best ones. My favorite is the animation of this one, though. I love the spinning orbs on the side. Number 23. One habit I have when I'm researching the lore on new From games is to look over the song list, which often have little lore tidbits in them. In Elden Ring, for example, the song list revealed that Margit is an omen illusion, giving us an official term for the mirror images that omen in the game have. And in Armored Core 6 as well, some songs do reveal a bit more flavor about the game. For example, the song that plays when you're in the garage is called Stowaway, which presumably references the garage unit you're stowed away in as a passenger. And we never get direct confirmation of this, but I like to imagine that this garage is pretty mobile, since you access it across many different continents, and that also supports that sort of stowaway feeling as it travels around the world. The song that plays when you confront and surprise the Tester AC Pilot is called Fight or Flight, and it makes you realize that it's actually pretty admirable that the Tester AC Pilot returns fire here rather than just running away. Next, the song that plays during the mission to investigate B.A.L.T.E.U.S Arsenal No. 2 is named Pulling Strings, perhaps referencing how the RLF is using you to figure out what's really going on here, or it could be referencing ALLMIND, who is sort of pulling strings behind the scenes, especially at the B.A.L.T.E.U.S Arsenal. And when you first enter Institute City, the song that plays is called Make Things Right. And after all, in this decimated city, you're seeing what burning the coral and making things right looks like to Walter and Carla for the first time. Speaking of which, Song 44 is The Man Who Passed the Torch, and the man in question is presumably Walter. He's the one who wanted you to take on his legacy and burn the coral, and him being the man who passed the torch is so poetic with that context. In previous Armored Core games, there were way more extension parts and shoulder parts to choose from. Back then, you could equip energy shields, bomb launchers, heat sinks, extra missiles, extra boosters, emergency energy refills, radar jamming, and even decoys or flares to draw enemy fire away from you. And I remember thinking that flares or anti-missile systems would be really useful in AC6. Looking at you, B.A.L.T.E.U.S. So imagine my surprise when I realized that flares actually are in the game. You just can't use them. It's so easy to miss, but some LCs from the PCA actually do emit flares, which will immediately drag your missiles from their intended target. So this gives me faith that we'll at least see flares added to the game in DLC or something eventually. The tech is clearly there, and it would be great to have more customization choices like there were in previous games. I used to love how much utility and flavor these extra parts and extensions gave to your mech. The HCs and LCs from the PCA in general just have a bunch of cool tech that'd be great to use on an AC. Like, they even have these solid shields from previous games, which back then wouldn't impact your energy meter at all when you absorbed damage. So why can't I equip these? And when the PCA's forces get assimilated by Arquebus, this unit gets an energy shield which can have its energy focused to a fine point, turning the shield into a spear. Even their energy shields become cooler than ours. One thing you should experiment with are assault-boosted quick turns, which not a lot of people know about. If you have your quick turn unlocked in the OS tuning menu, you can actually hold that button while assault boosting to unlock 90-degree turns while maintaining your assault boost, making navigation just a tiny bit easier. When I was making my build video, one thing I learned was that the recoil stat is sometimes even more important than the firearm specialization stat, because it doesn't matter how fast you can track enemies if you don't have the recoil control to stay on target, especially when it comes to fast-firing weapons. What I didn't know was that the recoil of a weapon on one arm can affect the recoil of the weapon on the other arm. So you might look at your shotgun's high recoil stat and figure it doesn't matter at all because shotguns fire so slowly, but if you couple a shotgun with another arm weapon that does get affected by recoil, then the shotgun bursts on one arm will cause your other weapon to be wildly inaccurate. It's just something to keep in mind. That's why I tend to dual wield two types of the same weapon most of the time. Dual wielding two of the same weapon also makes it easier to keep track of which weapons you're using. This is the strategy I used when I was trying to beat B.A.L.T.E.U.S without taking a hit, since I needed to focus so much more on avoidance rather than damage. And in two of these attempts, I discovered an extremely rare circumstance where B.A.L.T.E.U.S would initiate Phase 2 without activating Assault Armor. Now, usually this happens strictly at half health, but in a couple of cases it glitched out and suddenly started using the flamethrower and machine gun, which are Phase 2 weapons, without any warning. Not that I was complaining, since this was actually good for my no-hit run, but it meant that I was completely caught off guard when it did Assault Armor later here, doing damage to me and ending this attempt. So close. The word B.A.L.T.E.U.S actually refers to an ancient Roman sword belt, or the passages between tiers of seats in a Roman amphitheater. Both of these things call to mind the circular missile belts of B.A.L.T.E.U.S, making it such a great name. It's also consistent with the antiquated naming scheme of many other PCA mechs, like the Ektremoi craft, which reference Greek outrunners that would fight ahead of the main army, or the PCA Cataphract, which is named after soldiers and horses who wore cataphracts, suits of armor that covered their entire body. Secret 30. At the start of Operation Wall Climber, there's something firing at you from up on high. Its projectile is by far the most dangerous thing as you approach, but did you know that it's actually the Juggernaut boss firing at you from the top of the wall? 31. So it's been a while, and there's now a decent selection of Armored Core 6 mods over on the Nexus. My favorite one has to be this, the Next Movement Regulation, which aims to make your AC pilot a lot more like the Nexts did from the 4th generation of Armored Core. With this installed, flying will require less energy, movement will be faster, and you can chain quick boosts together, bringing back that whiplash movement of the 4th gen to your fights. If you're looking for a way to spice up your next playthrough, this might be a fun mod to try out. Number 32. Back before Armored Core 6 was released, there was an exclusive event in Japan where people could line up and actually play a demo build of the game. Lucky players were able to select from one of 3 preset builds, which FromSoft themselves only just shared with us. Here are their download codes. Back for the demo, players had 15 minutes with these builds to take on the mission to infiltrate the grid and to take out Rummy and the Smart Cleaner. Apparently, the energy at this event was insane, and people who managed to play the game for the crowd often achieved meme status. For example, one man was given the title the Sekiro of Hiroshima for clearing the demo with an injured arm. I love it. At that Japanese demo, a lot of people loved Rummy's signature scream about Mad Stomp, and in the full version of the game, there's actually another character that became quite popular among the Japanese player base, and that's Honest Brute. I think he was popular because his Japanese dialogue actually comes across a bit differently. He actually sings his quick, slow, quick, slow tune in English, not Japanese, as you'd expect.
Slow, slow, quick, slow. Slow, slow, quick, slow.
But in contrast, there's another character whose dialogue I feel is objectively better in the English than the Japanese. So, as you may know, if you stop attacking Swinburne, then you get the opportunity to spare his life. But if you do that, you'll incur the wrath of Rokumonsen, an elite assassin associated with the RLF who canonically loves Japan and Japanese culture.
Death and dishonor, such as the Oathbreaker's due. Pay the Sanzu toll!
According to his bio, he has a particular interest in ninjas and kabuki, and is well versed in long-lost classical theatre. But one amazing decision the English localization team made is that they decided to have him speak entirely in haiku.
The scoundrel's profits, coins slipping through cold fingers. Feed Rubicon's soil.
If you don't know, a haiku is a Japanese form of poetry, consisting of short, unrhymed lines delivered in a 3-line format, with each line consisting of 5 syllables, then 7, then 5 syllables again.
Heed me, Oathbreaker, treachery benefits none. Coral take you there.
Imagine the focus it takes to compose haiku while fighting at these speeds. Goddamn. The name Rokumonsen also has a lot of meaning as it pertains to this character. Roku means 6, Mon is the ancient currency unit, and Sen is coin. And when Rokumonsen says, "Pay the Sanzu toll," he's referring to a Japanese myth that a toll of 6 Mon must be paid before a soul can cross the Sanzu River to the afterlife. An invaluable resource for AC6 content has been Grey Caliber, who has been compiling all cut and alternate dialogue from characters over on their YouTube channel. In one video, they note the differences in how Pater treats you after you escape from re-education. Here, their plan is initially to capture you alive.
Raven, the independent mercenary subject to re-education, is on the run. I have direct orders from B2 Snail. Capture Raven and send the fugitive to the factory this time.
But as you continue to evade capture, things start to escalate, and eventually Snail decides to have you killed.
This is V6 Pater. I've received orders from B2 Snail. If the target resists, you are authorized to use lethal force.
But if you previously took the mission to ambush the Vespers, destroying Pater's AC and then killing Hawkins, Pater will remember that, and he will defy Snail to have you killed instead.
This is V5 Pater. I'm exercising my authority to revise your orders. You are authorized to use lethal force. The fugitive's survival is not mission critical.
He probably also feels more confident exercising his authority here, because if you took the mission to ambush the Vespers, then Pater will naturally be a higher rank in this mission, because you would have already killed his superior, V5 Hawkins. Another piece of amazing dialogue happens in the mission to destroy the Ice Worm. where Michigan chews you out if you neglect to bring the stun needle launcher, the very thing that this entire plan hinges upon.
Gun 13, let's see that fancy gizmo that Archibus paid the big bucks for. What? You didn't bring it? Gun 13, your ability to ruin my field trips is uncanny!
But one of the best dialogue changes happens if you fly past V2 Snail in this mission to eliminate Syndicala instead of fighting him.
That's V2 Snail. The man who captured you at Institute City. It's up to you how you want to deal with him.
But the resulting dialogue doesn't happen in this mission, it happens in the next one, when Snail confronts you while piloting Archibus B.A.L.T.E.U.S. If you fought him earlier, he'll say that,
No, your crime is that you tried to kill me, kill Archibus.
but if you didn't fight him, he takes offense to that too.
No, your crime is that you ignored me, ignored Archibus. You are vermin, and I will be rid of you.
Can we just take a moment to appreciate how many subtle voice changes they worked into the game, and how seamlessly they all work depending on these tiny choices that you make? One of the craziest comes from Chatty, who actually has different lines of dialogue that can change based on the level of access speed that you've unlocked in the OS tuning menu. If you regain access to the Xylem with max speed, he says this:
Chief, I couldn't. Never learn to laugh.
But if you do it slower, with your speed less upgraded, he says extra lines instead.
I'm sorry, Chief. You gave me life, but in the end, I never learned to laugh.
So yeah, upgrade your access speed and save yourself that extra bit of heartbreak. So we all know that ACs are big, but how big are the ones in 6? To figure this out, a lot of people online have used these as a metric for comparison: standard shipping containers, which are about 2.6 meters or 8.5 feet high in real life. And since the average AC aligns with 4 of them, that would make the average AC about 10 meters or 34 feet tall. But how does this compare to other ACs in the series? In earlier generations of Armored Core, the topic of size seems pretty hotly debated, and there are some inconsistencies in sort of the comparisons you can make between like cars and trucks in those games as well. But in AC 4 and 5, there are some good official sources for size, putting an AC's height at about 5 meters for 5th gen ACs and 10 meters for 4th gen next ACs. So, long story short, ACs in Gen 6 are about the same size as they were in 4. But even though they're about the same size, a 4th gen next AC would still wipe the floor with a Gen 6 AC from Fires of Rubicon. No contest. As for what the biggest structure in AC6 is, that title kind of has to go to the vascular plant, which, when fully repaired, extends into space itself. There's a great video on the topic by V-Limit where he breaks it down as follows.
Here is the Erd tree, and here is the vascular plant. If that's not impressive enough to you, that's fine, because I lied. This is the vascular plant.
So, yeah, it's big. The fact that Archibus repaired this thing in that relatively short period of time where you're captured is also extremely impressive. Number 42. One of the most iconic elements of Armored Core 6 is this, the Red Glint. This thing is everywhere, from the very first mission to the very final moment. You cannot stop seeing it once you know about it. I'm not sure exactly what it's supposed to represent, though I like to think of it as a sort of signature of the coral, a visual element commonly seen on this planet that is defined by that sublime red substance. So, a little while ago I finished S-ranking every mission, and it was fun. I uploaded the entire process on my second channel, which you can check out here. I didn't find it too hard, but there were some missions that were surprisingly difficult. But one cool thing is that renowned modder The Fifth Matt actually made a ranking calculator for this game, which allows you to slide all of the variables around for every mission to try and figure out exactly what repair costs, ammo costs, and clear time criteria you need to meet for your S rank. This is an incredible tool if you're having trouble. Link in the description. One mission apparently cut at some point in development was one where we would have faced off against the Watchman, a name that allegedly would have referred to the giant satellite cannon that shoots you down in the introduction. According to Zully the Witch, there's an unused NPC version of this cannon with an ID that places it alongside bosses like the HC helicopter or the Sea Spider. Thus, it's logical that this thing could have once have been fought, probably in a similar fashion to the Strider, with platforms that you would have had to work your way around. Zully also reveals that the satellite does fire on the Xylem as a piece of background scenery during the mission to shut down the closure satellites, though, of course, you can't interact with it at all. But speaking of laser orbits, the PCA should just put a ton of these little VP60LT turret things up in space as a closure system instead, because these things have been buffed a lot. They're now so strong and so accurate that you can absolutely decimate any AC dumb enough to fly into you, as long as you have a bit of time to set them up in advance. I mean, just look at this. Continuing down the list of things that have been buffed, let's talk about the explosive thrower. I really wanted to include a build with this in my build video, but it just wasn't good enough at the time. But as of patch 1.03, it has better range, more ammo, and faster reload time, making it consistently hit anything that comes close to you. It also looks fantastic as a sort of faux shield for any Gundam build, if you're into that. Another thing I really wanted to make work in my build video was the burst handgun, which is perhaps the lightest weapon in all of AC6. Because of this, it works beautifully on a lightweight build, and with the right parts, you're able to exceed 400 boost speed, making you so hard to hit, even without dodging. It's really fun. My favorite build uses these with a laser dagger, and that's all you need. Previously, the only problem with this build was that this handgun didn't have enough total ammo to complete a lot of missions, but since that's been recently fixed, this build is now suddenly able to take on longer missions and even the final bosses as well. So this is a great build to have stored in your hangar. The last few patches have also been extremely generous to the bazookas and grenade launchers, which got nice buffs across the board. Especially noteworthy now are the Morleys, a spread bazooka which hits consistently and got buffed to be way lighter. The Armored Core series has a long history of model kits based on popular ACs that you can assemble, and I'm hoping they'll make some for AC6 as well, but until then they have announced this, a pre-built figure of Sol 644, which you fight at the end of the Fires of Raven ending. This is a collaboration between 30mm and Bandai in the Robot Spirits line of figures, and apparently they have a good reputation for quality figures, so if you're looking to pick one up, I'll try to update the description with a purchase link as soon as they're available. And speaking of things being made available to the public, I've always wanted to do that with my lore maps, which are what I use these days to help me understand all of the lore for my videos. So this is the mind map we've put together for AC6. Special thanks to Miss Pap, Zard, Absa, and Grey Caliber for their help on this. It features pretty much every single piece of dialogue from every mission, arranged chronologically with detailed notes on every relevant part of the game. And with all of the info laid out for me like this, it's made it so much easier to make sure I don't miss any details. Now, This software kind of limits the max amount of people who can view this at the same time, so right now it's just available for $5 patrons over on Patreon. But if there's enough demand, I'll try to open it up somehow. At the start of this video, I mentioned that I've got a huge lore video in the works, and this lore map is part of the reason it's taken so long to create. The entirety of AC6's story is in here, and I hope having these lore maps helps other people to dive into these stories for themselves if they don't want to just rely on me. This video will be released soon, and I hope it does the game justice. After that, it's back to Elden Ring, which I'm also extremely excited for. But thanks for watching. Check out the displates in the link below if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.